always requires people to click through.
Right.
We are now live.
Hello.
Hi.
Uh,
1, 2, 3. I'm just gonna hang out here while this link goes out. How's everyone doing? How's your day been?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Busy, but good.
Busy but good. What are you busy with these days?
We ate a lot of cake this morning.
Oh, damn.
Did a cake tasting.
Nice.
This isn't your first one, though, right?
This is our second one.
Oh.
I
How were
picked
the
out
cakes?
To narrow
the
down.
cakes were good. There was so much. There was strawberry and
Ooh.
almond and
Ooh.
carrot and
Ooh.
Italian cream and white and chocolate.
That's a lot.
I don't
Yeah.
want to make any of these decisions for you, but I think carrot is too bold of a choice for a wedding.
Agreed.
Mhm.
You could
Yeah.
do like a carrot, like
Sneak in a layer of carrot
You-
cake into your cake.
So
No.
I'm probably gonna have a carrot groom's cake because my aunt Amy
Right.
makes like the best fucking carrot cake
This
in the
is
world.
what I'm saying. That's good.
So
That's the thing I was going to say, is like a little side dish for a certain subset of people attending, or like at the rehearsal dinner, or at the, do you know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
for the party, for the folks who are not just gathered here today, but are like have a role to play,
Right. Yeah. The crew, as it were.
the crew.
Mhm.
I feel like more and more people are doing like wedding cupcakes now, which I feel like in theory is the best idea that you could have. But like wedding cakes as an object are so.
So we're going to have a smaller cake, and then we're
Okay.
also going to have a chocolate fountain.
Oh wow!
There
What do you
you
dip in the
go.
chocolate? What is like the? Talk me
That's a
through
good
it.
question. I don't know
Fruit,
yet.
Rice Krispie
Probably like
treats.
fruit,
Okay.
marshmallows.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's like a campfire, but chocolate.
Right.
Yeah.
Chocolate campfire.
Well, there's no heat.
It's not warm chocolate.
But it's not like
Yeah, it's not like hot.
There's no
hot.
heating element.
right. You're not roasting those marshmallows and then putting
Yeah.
chocolate on.
No, I know, but I'm just saying,
Okay.
like, it's a similar concept.
It's food on a stick.
It's
You're
food
right
on a
about that
stick,
part.
is what I'm saying.
Mhm.
It's food you would put on a stick. Stick
It's like
foods.
it's like chocolate fondue.
Right.
Right.
Yes. But I've never done fondue either. I'm not living that life.
Oh, we
Oh.
should do fondue.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm not judging it, but it's just never been a thing in my life. So,
Like I don't love fondue enough to be like I'm gonna have fondue once a day every week. But it's a
Okay.
fun thing to do every once in a while.
That seems like it'd be excessive for
Yeah.
anybody.
Yeah. Well, but like I probably eat chicken that much, if not more.
once a week, right? Sure, but chicken is
Yeah.
like you eat cheese that much too, probably. You don't eat fondue
Yeah,
is like
true.
a particular like preparation of
Preparation.
yes. But there are probably things you eat more often than that, though, right? Like certainly, a lot of people eat stuff that is baked more often than once a week, or fried more often than once a week. So, yeah, you know. All right, we should do a podcast. Are you ready to do this tips of the table episode?
Yeah.
We already did a
Yeah.
clap, so we don't have to do that. So a little, different order than normal here.
Pre-game clap.
Right.
Yeah.
We could still do a clap if that made you feel better. It would only throw Allie off because it'd be a second clap, so let's not do that. All right. Welcome to... God damn it. Welcome to Tips at the Table, an RPG podcast focused on critical questions, hopefully smart answers, and fun interactions between good friends. I'm your host, Austin Walker. Joining me today, Ali Akampora.
Hi, my name is Ali Akampori. You can find me at Ali_West on Twitter.com.
Andy Clare.
Hey, I'm Andy. You can find me on Twitter at Captain Trash, and you can listen to my other show, Emoji Drome, on your podcast app of choice.
And
I never know what to say there.
Yeah, also, Andrew Lee Swan.
Hey, you can find me on Twitter at Swanjoy3000.
We got the A crew here today. We just gathered all our A's. I guess Art's
shit.
not here. We got to get Art in the next one. But, A Squad was good. A Town, what's up? We're here to answer your questions about role-playing games. you know what a Tips at the Table is. But before we get into that, just really quick, want to shout out a bunch of stuff that's been going up on the Patreon lately and on the main feed in case you're not caught up in one of those places. On the main feed, we are now one full arc, 2 episodes into The Road to Partisan, which is our upcoming season of Beam Saber. It takes place in the same universe as Twilight Mirage and Counterweight, set 5,000 years after Twilight Mirage, give or take. That first arc is Dialect, and that is a game that we actually ran about 11 months ago, last December, but cut down and edited. And really quick, what I want to say is that was a game with 3 people in it, no music cues, a lot of dead air and stuff to cut, but very little in terms of like structural flow stuff. Allie is a miracle worker and has edited so many more episodes. I say this because I edited the episodes of Dialect, and in doing it, I always have already respected what Allie does week to week, obviously, but like, yo, days pass by and you're like, oh shit, I gotta sit down for hours and hours and do this thing. Like, I told myself I would do it today, and now it is 7 p.m. and I had to do other shit, and now I gotta like do this, and there's not a way to do it faster. Like, there is.
There isn't.
You gotta do it to do it.
Austin, I'm going to tell you this now just so you can plan your days better.
Yeah.
Every hour raw audio takes 2 hours to edit.
Allie, can I tell you something? Every hour, every raw hour takes you 2 hours to edit. You are practiced at that shit. It was fine. It was not like it was a good process. Like I'm actually, because I just changed my role at Vice and have a lot more free time because I wanted that, and I wanted like that style of work to do, and it was actually really pleasurable to do, but it's a lot, and you do it really well. So shout outs to Allie, who will also be editing some of The Road to Season 6, some of The Road to Partisan. I think we're going to try to split it up. But that's going on, so people should go check that out in the main feed. Those all have new intros. Those all have new the new great intro song from Jack, which is available at notquitereal.bandcamp.com, and then new descriptions, more weird backstory stuff showing up in description text. So make sure to read that stuff. None of that's important in the sense that like none of it's a code for what's coming in Partisan or like for. It's not a secret key, you know what I mean? It's not like, aha, I gotcha. If only you pieced this together, you could have stopped this terrible thing. It's just fun backstory fluff stuff. So, but I enjoy writing it, and that's good. Something more important for Partisan in terms of what does that season look like is building all of the factions and squads and setting. And I'm going over my entire process for that in Patreon updates called Drawing Maps. Traditionally, or back, last year, Drawing Maps had been a series of streams. And I'm not totally swearing off the idea of doing some more streams in the future in Drawing Maps, but I've been doing this combination of text and podcast update, kind of 45 to 90 minute long updates, depending on how long they go, in which I'm walking through the 5 major factions of Partisan. And I'll probably end up talking a little bit about that today when we talk about one of the questions that came in terms of how much prep to do and when to do it and blah, blah, blah. But that's been really fun, both because it's fun to kind of foreground the rules that are in Beam Saber for creating factions and squads, but also because it has been fun to really sit down and talk through everything that goes into building a palette of ideas that then we'll pull from for the season. I'll say up top, like, don't worry about spoilers unless you count like the existence of something as a spoiler, if that makes sense. Like, there's nothing in those episodes of Drawing Maps that I would say is a spoiler for the season, because I'm going to show the players the things I've written here once they're done, so that I can help myself understand what people are interested in. So it's not like anything here is like a twist or like here are the plot beats. It's much more like looking at a level of Hitman and being like, well, what are the characters in this level? Okay, cool. There's a gun hidden over here. There's a guy in a chicken suit over there. And, I can see why some people would say that's a spoiler, but it is not plot-based stuff. So check those out. 4 of those are up now. What else? We have Bluff City coming, right? I have to write and record an intro for a couple of those. We're going to record another one of those soon. And then is there anything else that we're that's hitting soon. Oh, incredible Pusher update from Jack. I don't often do like the hard sell on Pusher stuff unless we got something like I think so good in there. But Jack just uploaded. Allie, how many
34?
34 34 demo / scratch tracks of early Spring and Hyron soundtrack work are up on the Pusher tier. That's an expensive tier. That's a tier that, like, I think we've said before, we don't mind if you're like, I'm going to do 1 month at Pusher and then drop back down to the friend tier. Totally okay to do that. Check out that stuff because it's stuff that we all love. There's some really cool stuff in the Pusher feed in general, but this one is really great. They put together 34 tracks of varying audio quality, admittedly on their part, of like, hey, here are some ideas I had that never really turned into a full song. So that stuff has been great. And in general, I want to say we are doing our best to catch up on all of the Patreon stuff. Now that I have some more time, I've been able to kind of put my attention towards it. I know, Allie, in lieu of doing a regular season, I know you've put a lot of time into trying to catch up on some of this stuff. We're getting schedules together, all sorts of stuff. So look forward to more Patreon stuff in the near future. Anything else?
There should be a new Clapcast this weekend.
Awesome, a new Clapcast this weekend, which will have new musical stings from Jack.
No, it won't.
Wait, will it not?
I'm doing I have to do the big Hyron finale Clapcast,
Oh, okay.
which has been delayed because, like, spoilers and all the other stuff.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Huge, and it's a bunch of stuff with all of us, so it's just gonna be
That's fun.
So enjoy it.
Awesome.
If not tomorrow, probably Monday.
God. Yeah, okay. I'm looking forward to it. I listen to those because I forget that we have those. Like, there's stuff in there that I've forgotten that we've said, and it's all very good. All right. So, tips at the table. Today, we start with a question from Joe, who says, for the better part of 2 years, a friend and I have been working on a mecha powered by the Apocalypse hack that's largely influenced by Universal Century Gundam and features squad-based combat. I really love our game, but sometimes worry that we missed our window with Beam Saber looking like it's filling that niche. I'm even scared to read Beam Saber, even though it seems like it's entirely my shit. I've got some major imposter syndrome. What do you do when something you made seems like it may be similar to something else? I don't even know what venue I would go about to share playbooks now that Google Plus has disappeared. Anyway, thanks for the great show you make. You all inspire me weekly to be a better GM and player. Thank you so much, Joe. The obvious thing that we're going to say is, like, you should make that game. That game sounds dope. I want to read that game. But I don't know if people
My second thing is...
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
No, just throwing really to you.
You should probably read Beam Saber as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Just to be like, just to see. Because I think that there's going to be the reaction of, like, oh, some of this stuff is kind of similar and we should change it. Or, like, you're going to have the relief of being like, oh, no, I would have done that differently.
Right,
so it's fine.
Right. I have such mixed feelings about that stuff. So I know for a fact that I know other tabletop designers who avoid doing that. Like, I've spoken to both Briar Sovereign, who's making Armor Astir, the game that we played, that will be next in the Road to Season 6, the Road to Partisan, actually. And I don't think that Briar... I think we talked about, like... It might be the other way around. It might be Austin Ramsey maybe is one who told me that he had not yet read Armor Astir for this exact same reason. And I want to be clear, that was said, I think, in a public chat. That was not me betraying any private information. I don't think. I hope not. If so, I'm sorry. But I've done this too.
We're behind the paywall.
Yeah, whew, okay, safe. But I've definitely done this sort of thing of, like, I do it with fan work. I don't read any fanfic from our own stuff until I'm done with, like, I've never read Hyron fanfic before. I can now do that for the first time because we're done with it. I know that's weird, but it's like, I don't want to bite anything. And I don't want to have my feeling be like, oh, fuck, I've told a bad story compared to what else, the other directions I could have gone here. I mean, as a critic, I definitely do this. As a games critic, I spent years, like, I'm not going to read a review or an impressions piece of a game I'm writing until I've written my review. And then for, like, the second wave of stuff, I'll go out and read stuff and take a look. And so my advice is, if you do want to commit to that, and I think I'm with Allie, which is like, in this case, I would rather go out and read all the other mech games. There's a ton of mech games coming out, so go look at those. But if you definitely like, I don't want to do that until I'm pretty satisfied with my own stuff, or I don't want to do that until I know what I'm doing on my end. Maybe give yourself like a draft, a 1.0 version, and then you go, okay, I know what my game is. I know what the identity of my game is. Now I'm going to go out there and look at other stuff and see how it differs and if there's any influence I can take, That's like a halfway point there, maybe. But I'll also just note, there's a bunch of mech games coming out right now. Part of the reason we wanted to do the road to season 6 was we wanted to try out a bunch of different mech stuff because there was so much coming out. There was even more when we started the road to season 6. And a couple projects have been put on hold, or we figured out like, oh, well, Lancer's just not going to be the right fit for us anyway. But there's stuff out there, and so you shouldn't feel like there's only Beam Saber or something like that, I don't know if anyone else here has ever had that feeling of imposter syndrome with a creative project.
Not a creative project, but like in
Life.
my work. Yeah, all in my life. Well, yeah, no, like this creative project, there's tons of like messages where I've like sent you, Austin, where I'm like, hey, do I suck at this?
You do not suck
am
at
I
this.
actually
You're
terrible?
very good at this.
Basically what you say back. But I think like anytime you're doing something that you really care about, that imposter syndrome is way easier to happen and is more intense. And I think this is probably something where it's helpful to have a co-creator, because you can go to your co-creator and like use them as like that pump up. Like I definitely have other therapist friends that either before or after a session, I like will text and be like, okay, I'm pretty sure I don't suck at this, but this happened and now I think I suck at this. Will you remind me that I don't suck at this? And it's just, sometimes you just need those people in your life, especially like I said, when you're doing something you really, really, really care about, because you're invested in how well it goes.
Totally. I think there is like, there's the fear sometimes when you're making something that you're like, I only want input from people who are going to give me shit about it, right? Like I only want the harshest, truest, perspective. And like, I'm fine with like, that does help sometimes, but also you have to have people who can gas you up and who are going to be like, you know what? You're doing good shit. Trust in yourself. Like flex for me. You know what I mean? Like it is good to have cheerleaders. Like that is a real important role that friends can have in your life. Often because all creative processes are fucked. They're all bad until they're good. Like you make stuff and you're like, this is rough, dog. Like, what are we doing? We got to get out of here. And then you push through and you're like, okay, I turned a corner. I found it. I found the line. I found the direction I wanted to do. And it is often the case that like, you don't know where that is. And if you don't have that support, you won't be able to push through until you find it, So give yourself that support for sure.
Also, and I think too, like, I don't even know if you meant to frame it this way, but I think a lot of times, I know I definitely do this, I tend to frame that kind of negative or constructive feedback as like more true than the positive feedback. And, I think of positive feedback as like cheerleading or something. But like, if you're doing something good, the positive feedback is just as true and valid as any sort of constructive or negative feedback.
Totally. The other thing here is like, what is your long-term end goal for the project? Sometimes if you're afraid that you're biting off of something else, or that someone else is already doing something that is like filling a marketplace niche, okay, that doesn't mean the project you're working on doesn't have value, right? Like there are lots of songs about love. And sometimes the marketplace is big enough for more than one. And sometimes you want to sing a song about love or write a song about love. And it's okay that it's not going to be a #1 pop song, like that the market is flooded. Like sometimes you want to make a game about giant robots fighting and like about squad combat based on Gundam. Make that game. Let me tell you, please. I think we got a question from someone else that I don't think is in this set. At some point, I was scrolling through our old questions today, and someone was like, how do you make an actual play podcast? There are so many other actual play podcasts. How would I ever make a dent? And like, we started making this because we had a small streaming audience already, but mostly because we wanted to play games with each other. And I know that feels like a really like shitty, kitschy, twee startup framing, but that is the truth. It was like, we just recently, another pusher update, Allie got together all of the initial communications, excuse me, about starting this show. And it is for real just me emailing people, being like, all right, so I think I want to play a game called Dungeon World. Here are some ideas. Like, does this sound good? How many sessions should we do? Blah, 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 blah. And, like, we wanted to play a game. You want to make this thing. And it would be cool if you sold it and made money on it, for sure, because you put work into it. And I think that creative work that finds an audience deserves to be supported. But also, like, it sounds like you're having fun making a cool thing for you and your friends, and, like, stay on that shit. Like, it's okay if that is what it is for. Sometimes you write something for you, not necessarily for a market. And it's not just okay. That is, like, valorous in its own right in some way. Also, send me this game. I would like to send you notes on this game. Send me this game, Joe. You have our email. Any other thoughts here before we continue? All right. Gavin writes in and says, I've been GMing a game of Blades in the Dark for about 6 months now, and it's going great. I cannot believe this next sentence. It's the best sentence I've ever read. I originally pitched the game as an open-world Yakuza 0 meets Dishonored, where the players decide or have total agency for what they do and when. Great pitch. Yakuza 0 meets Dishonored. Mwah. Love it. Someone write that down. I don't want to lift anything, but Stephen A. Smith's voice.
Can you just run this for me? Like,
I know.
This is a one shot.
I mean, I'll say some shit in Discord later. To help them handle the mechanics and the setting, I had created a number of missions that they could do in any order. We finished those missions up 2 sessions ago. We also have done missions that they came up with themselves. Now that my missions are completed, my players have started suffering from decision paralysis. Not only in coming up with missions that they want to do, but also in doing things during those missions. I find myself throwing out a bunch of options and seeing, and it seems to make the decision paralysis worse. How do I give my players as much agency as possible without overwhelming them with possibility? On the player end, what sort of information or actions do you want from everyone else when you find yourself in decision paralysis? I'm actually going to start by putting this to y'all, because I feel like this past season of Dungeon World, not Blades, really was built in this similar structure where, like, yeah, I had some missions prepared, but we kept coming back to these questions of, like, well, what do y'all want to do? And I'm curious how you addressed this dilemma.
I think one of the things that worked really well with Spring is that we weren't necessarily, while we were given like options for stuff to do, it wasn't like you were trying to direct our attention in one specific way. It was just like you could divert it into these sort of like objectives, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I think if the worries,
I'm trying to bring it back now. Check. Are we back? Internet, are we back? I mean, I hear y'all, but I'm just asking if the chat sees us yet. We are back. I apologize.
Yeah,
I live in
back.
New York. I live in a part of New York where I have 0 option for different high-speed internet. And the internet I have just dies for about 3 minutes every 5 hours. It just does it.
That's great.
It's so good. I love to live and work on the internet here. It's fantastic.
Well, it happens on schedule, so it's a feature, not a bug.
Yes. The bad news is, Andy, apparently you gave a great response, and I missed it, and I feel bad.
I'm not sure whereabouts I cut off, but I'll try and summarize things. If you're listening now, it's just more it's more incentive to go back to the recording after the live stream.
Bonus content. Yeah.
Exactly. Get our numbers up. So what I was saying is, first of all, I talked about how, like, one of the reasons why it was so easy, at least for me, to sort of have an idea of where I wanted to go in Spring was that because we had a lot of backstory to work with, but also they do, and so using that will help with your momentum and help your players be invested more. But the other big one when it comes to like in session, like or like if this is Blades in the Dark, like in heist stuff, is time sensitive objectives and consequences for taking too much time. Make your players feel like the world moves when they're not moving, and it'll incentivize them to think on their feet more and go with their instincts a bit more, as opposed to overthinking, like I know that I'm personally prone to do.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I think like that is one of those things like I would not have even come to that, even though that is 100% the technique I tried to use. It was like light fire under people's asses, show them that the world keeps moving. Because it's probably not the case that the people at the table, that your players, Gavin, don't have thoughts about what to do. It's probably that they are like, well, with everything out in front of us, it's hard to prioritize. It's hard to know which thing I would want to do. But yeah, giving them a little bit of an axe hanging over everyone's head is like, okay, make a decision there. The other thing I would say that I did my best to do was that there are different types of openness. You can offer, I think when you think about railroading, people think about a straight line, but there are types of direction you can give that still have lots of branching and lots of like kind of arenas that you get to. Where it's like, all right, well, what do you do inside of this space? And then you can build from whatever happens there. So, you think about something like Marielda, while there were definitely moments where I was like, well, what are y'all off to do? I'd basically be like, all right, here are the 4 places that you're going to hit. Blades in specific, definitely has the setup of like, while you can totally run it as almost an open world game like that, your goal is to build out your crew in bigger and better ways. And so you as the GM can say like, y'all have sat around and thought up, here are like 4 ways you could go about doing it. And you can do that in very particular ways. Like, all right, we need to do these 4 things. We need to rob this bank. We need to steal this golden, cape. I don't know why it's a golden cape, but it's dope. We need to, erase the records of our misdeeds, and we need to do blah, blah, blah. Or you can say, all right, we need to get this much money. We need some sort of magical artifact. We need some other, thing that we can find some other place, and let them play inside of the space in front of you. And so to some degree, it's like you can give them particular objectives and that might feel too much like you're railroading, not enough openness. Or you can give them kind of like soft objectives. You can give them like soft goals and say, given that what you're trying to do is raise enough money to bribe the guy, the warden, to get your friend out of prison, you need to do something to raise that money. How do you go about doing it? Let's start talking from there. I think that is a fun way to kind of to start their brains going in certain directions and give them like definitive goals. Also, you could set up like a fake like criminal corkboard situation where you're like, all right, how much have you how much of this goal have you succeeded at so far? So that's always fun. What I would say avoiding is the bit where you're like throwing out a bunch of options, or I don't know, maybe you're doing this in a way that isn't terrifying, but there is a degree to which I, as a GM, have done that and see people shut down. We're like, all right, you could do X, you could do Y, you could do Z, you could do A or B, and it's like, okay, now I really don't know what I want to do. You've given me, I'm paralyzed by having too many decisions. You introduced new decisions I hadn't even thought about yet. And so that can be tough. I definitely get the impulse, but it's maybe one to be a little softer about there. I'm trying to think if there's any other big thing here. As always, just like general communication helps. Talking with your players about not story stuff, but about play stuff is fun and helps a lot, because you can say like, what do you want to do that is not about the story, but is like, what's like a cool type of movie you want to emulate? Like, oh, would it be cool to do like a car-based thing? Not that Blade says cars, but like some sort of racetrack-based thing maybe? Or would it be cool to fight some ghosts? Like, we haven't found any ghosts. Do you want to do a ghost mission? Okay, cool. Let's look at the map and figure it out. I guess that's my last piece of advice here, is to like think about the way you're presenting the world and the information in it to your players. Because what you want to do is make sure you're not overwhelming them with information, but that you are kind of putting in hooks that they can see and get caught on, if that makes sense. Where they're like, you have a faction listed. Let's say you need to steal 1,000 gold to get something done, and you're like, all right, here are the places where you could theoretically get 1,000 gold. List them out, and then have like one or two interesting details for each place that gets people's like to wet their whistles a little bit, and they go, ooh, okay, like yeah, let's try to route from this motherfucker. This guy sucks. And that can help them begin to kind of like get that enthusiasm going, where then they will generate their own ideas, if that makes sense. So yeah, I think that's my advice. I don't know if anyone else, again, on the player side has hit this before or worked through it.
Yeah. I well, just in my like reaction from reading the question, it seems that like it was going fine when you had initially had like a list of missions for them to do, and they were also creating like stuff that they wanted to do. So like regenerating that list isn't a bad thing. Because like
Yeah.
especially thinking of like even the way that I play Yakuza, it's like I'll turn on my PS4 and I'll either decide like, am I gonna spend this next 2 hours just like running around, eating some food, going to the arcade, or do I like finally want to go to like the place and go talk to this guy and
Time to
beat
talk to
him up?
Nishiki. Like,
Right.
we got,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. Am I going
So
to sit
there's
through a
like
cutscene tonight? Like,
yeah, exactly. So there's that thing of like, is the thing that I want to do like push the plot forward, or just like do the thing that I want to do? Um, the second thing is like, I think the way that we kind of made this work during Hyron when we were doing the downtime stuff was just like out of character the night before, the week before, being like, okay, what do people want to do today? And I think that really helps because like on your side as a GM, you can start thinking of like strings to set up for them to kind of be pulled in that direction if they're having a hard time kind of bringing themselves there themselves. Um, Also, it will just be helpful for someone to say like, "Oh, I want to speak to John." I
yes,
really just want to
100%
have
that.
this conversation with John.
Yeah,
'Cause then you could be like, "Oh, when they talk to John, John will, have this interaction with them
totally.
that'll lead to a thing."
There's a bit that I guess I never talked about in this term, but in Twilight Mirage, one of the biggest flags in Twilight Mirage was that Allie loved Waltz Tango Cash, and so going into the second, it's fair. Waltz was great. Going into the second half of the season, I knew I wanted to get Waltz in basically right away. And I needed a vector from someone that the players trusted to start talking about another NPC, a character called the Waking Cadent. And I needed someone to be like, yo, this person is dangerous. And like, who can introduce this plot hook about a new NPC that no one has heard of before, where they will be taken seriously? And the answer was award-winning bounty hunter Waltz Tango Cash. Because if Waltz is shook, then it's worth being shook, right?
Yeah, that's a problem.
Yeah, and so it's like for there, it was as simple as like me introducing Waltz into a mission that didn't necessarily have anything to do with Waltz. They were off on some other shit, and Waltz happened to be there working security. And if I could go back and do that again, I might have even given them that information easier earlier. I guess maybe if like work had gone differently, y'all would have learned that. But I would have like made sure. There are times you're just like, yeah, no, and also you find out that, this person is involved in this one kind of branch you can go from. But all that comes back to Allie saying to me, both in game, obviously, but also out of game, like, oh, we should do more with Waltz, so yeah.
Everyone loved Waltz, by the way.
I know.
loved him the most, but everybody.
Yes. God. But no, that's a great way of thinking about it. It does, like Gavin, it sounds like the game was going great in terms of just like that blend. Keep that blend up.
No podcast has no new content, so they started. They started doing FMA, and it's got me rewatching it. It's so good.
I really want to watch it. I don't know if the stream is back yet. Let's see. It might be. Hi, stream. Are we back? If this happens a third time, I'm going to move.
Chat seems to say it's back.
Yeah, people are saying back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fucking cursed. I hate this so much. Cannot believe. Anyway, we're moving on to another question at this point. Is that okay? Are we all good on the last one? Okay.
Yeah.
I feel like given the current rate, we'll get through this in 2 hours because I'll lose connection every question. Once a question.
There we go.
This next one comes in from Prep Shy in Chi Town, who says, I love tabletop games, and I have some limited experience GMing one-shot games. I'd like to try running a longer campaign, but my background is in improv more than it is in writing, and I have trouble working on prep. For anyone who's run games in the past, what tips do you have for making prep happen in spite of time constraints, mental illness, and all that junk? What sort of prep is crucial, and what can be left to the moment? How do I make best use of my time and energy, especially when I'm more assured in my improvising skills than I am in my preparing skills? Any suggestions y'all have would be appreciated. Anyone here have thoughts before I talk about my own situation? I know some of y'all have run some stuff before.
I'm trying to grab my notebook for mask so I can literally look at what I wrote down as my prep for our last session we played last Friday. Um,
Is this because
literally
it's not that much?
No, literally
Oh, see,
all I
I
have
was-
written down here is the hooks for each of the main characters.
Mm-hmm.
So like in that's a thing in Mask where like the hook is like, you're trying to challenge each character's like labels one way versus another way. And then I have
Could you give me an
basically
example? Can you just give me an example of that? Just for we even played Masks in like 7 months, maybe, and
sure.
just
So my fiance's character, she's playing the Janice class, which is basically like the Spider-Man class. It is like you are a person who is a superhero, but also very much has like normal people life.
Gotcha.
And it's about balancing those two. So her kind of labels that I put as like the hook for her are her mundane, which is like your rating as like your normal people connections, versus superior, which is like one of the more superhero-y labels.
Gotcha.
And then I basically have like the big overarching goal for that session, which was basically they had been trapped in a different multiverse universe with someone who was originally an antagonist, but this kind of like this episode was basically them either like turning this person to their side or them having to stay an antagonist.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have written down a couple of ideas for different like scenes or areas they could go into. And then I wrote down a sketch of like the big bad they would fight at the end. And that's it. And this is like one page in a notebook.
Right. That's you can do it that little. And like my guess is you have done longer prep before, and you're kind of running on that longer prep in terms of like where are we right now? What are who are the things that they're going to come into conflict with? The people they're going to come into conflict with.
And part of why that's so short too is again they are in like an abandoned like post-apocalypse world that is separate from the usual setting. So I was also divorced from a lot of the other kind of conflicts and things like that might be going on in this session.
Right.
But yeah.
Right. I very much lean towards that style of prep once we're like in it for sure. And I think that's you shouldn't feel like I'm so torn on this question to some degree because part of me is like, fuck it, man. If you're good at improv, let's go. Like, let's get it. Like, we don't need that much more. But there is also part of me that like the part of me who talking about flags a lot, wants you to still put in that time, the same place that Dre, you just described putting in the time, which is about thinking about your characters and your players and where their interests are. If you've ever seen me do the old drawing map streams, I actually would straight up look at everyone's character sheets and write down potential hooks in the same way, Dre, that you were just describing for masks, where like, for instance, here is, I'll pull it up onto stream. Here is a set of notes for Throndir from Spring, where I wrote down your alignment, put yourself at risk to help improve someone else's life. And then I was like, well, underscore the fact that sometimes improving someone else's life does not take risk, but time or effort. I wrote down your bonds and had like notes on ways to bring your bond into stress. I wrote down ways to cause like a little bit of conflict and have you work through some stuff. ways to trigger vampiric weaknesses, etc. And it's like, well, those aren't story beats necessarily. Those aren't like, here's a speech from an NPC. It's like, how can I find the right frames to start? So the right scenes to start framing. How do I know how to put two characters into relation to each other, etc. And that stuff is actually way more useful for keeping the table interested than having like detailed notes about the grand hall of whatever place you're going to, you know. Sketches, if you're limited on time or energy or focus, sketches do a lot of work. And also if you're doing kind of the sort of games that we love, asking your players to fill in some of those gaps can also do that work for you and bring them in that way. So I think that's probably like my advice for you is like, think about the core things you can sketch, and think about if you're going to spend a lot of time in one place, it should be on characters, character relationships, and character goals. Any other thoughts here? I guess I will say the just real quick, as I reread it and thinking about this going from the top of the campaign, you probably will need to put in a little bit more work, but I would say don't do that deep dive until you've run a couple of light sessions early on. Like, if you are playing something like Dungeon World, set up a very basic encounter, a very basic like first session where, you know, maybe you have a couple of NPC or enemy types from the book where you have like a cool idea that is like the heart of whatever that session or two is. But then take the pause and say, okay, what were my players interested in? Build out from there. And it is 100% okay to do it in little bits and pieces. You don't need to build a huge Clockwork World out the gate. You can very much be like, all right, I'm gonna do the thing the book says and make some fronts, but I'm not gonna do like grand epic, you know, world-changing fronts. Like, we're gonna have with this one town and like a couple of things that are at risk here, but a front is a very small thing in Dungeon World. Even like looking at the sprawl and the way corporations are set up, it's pretty easy to like to set up what their clocks are and what their goals are. So move slowly in that way. And eventually the hope is that you end up getting excited about the stories that you're telling, and that the weight of doing that prep, because it can be hard to get excited to do it, will be lifted, and you'll actually find the bits that you're really interested in. Also, play a game that has a pre-built setting. Like, Blades has a dope setting. Beam Saber has a cool fucking setting. Scum and Villainy, all those games have dope settings already that are worth playing in, and it is okay to be like, let's start there. That's going to lift so much off your plate in terms of building, you know, the basic structure of a world and a setting. And you can just hand it over that stuff to your players and be like, where in here do you want to be? What's a dope planet you want to be on? Or what part of Duskfall do you want your game to be set in? Talk through it with them, because that'll take so much off your plate, off your back. Andy, you were going to say something.
I was actually about to say that.
Sorry.
Because especially if your skills lie in improv, right? Because then you
Yes.
can make it more your own thing as time goes on. I feel like a lot of people hesitate now to use the pre-built thing, or at least people who listen to our show do,
Yeah.
because you know, we do all our world building stuff.
We do.
But there's nothing wrong with that, because world building happens while you play too.
Totally. There are different types of world building, right? Like, if we were going to do a Star Wars game, there would be Jedi in it, you know? We wouldn't like, and we're not going to fucking throw it all out. We would have elements that would be really recognizable. But also there would be still room for world building, because we would interpret things differently. We would find our own corners to invent new stuff. You know, I don't ever want to work with Disney, but Disney, call us.
Please.
I would do a Star Wars thing so quick, it's not even funny. Fucking just call
I'll
me.
write for the Mandalorian. Like, call me.
You would do so much good work.
I
God.
would do the best work.
You would do the best work, Allie. Do you have any thoughts here, Allie?
Not really. I think that, like, I've never done GMing, so I don't have a ton of experience here, but I feel like, especially since you're starting a campaign, it's going to be a lot of work at the top, and a lot of that work can be done with the group that you're playing with. Just in terms of like, what do we want to do? Where do we want this planet to be? What do we want this story to be about? What kind of things in media do we like?
Yeah.
that can be a really fun collaborative thing, and then see how it feels as you're doing it.
Yeah.
Practice is probably going to make perfect on this one, so
Get a
good
pizza
luck.
and bring people over and be like, and get like blank paper, and be like, let's write down some things that are cool. Dragons, 1. Cyborgs, 2. I guess we're playing Shadowrun. Okay. Like, start really broad and like talk about the stuff that you're like just generally you want to see. We have that episode 0 or episode -1 of Counterweight, which like is an episode that's not in the feed directly. There's a link out in Counterweight episode 0 to the true episode 0, to the like 5-hour long conversation we had. But that conversation was so important because it helped figure out everything about the tone of what we were about to do and so many other things. And I was not going to do all that work just by myself. Like it would have been very one-sided. And it would have been very like, honestly, kind of demoralizing to end up with a world that is just for you in your head. And then you go like, all right, I've done all this work. Come play in my playground now. It's like, well, no, like it should be everyone's playground. Everyone should touch it a little bit up top so that there is a degree of like co-ownership. You'll get more out of it in the long run, for sure. All right, next question comes in from Jack, not our Jack, a different Jack, who has a question about persuasion mechanics. Jack writes, I've been exposed to 2 things recently that have made me completely reconsider how I feel about persuade or parlay or convince or con mechanics in RPGs. I've been running a Diablo-themed World of Dungeons campaign. World of Dungeons suggests that you only roll when something is, quote, risky, which has really trimmed down the number of seemingly superfluous rolls I've been making folks do. 2, someone on Twitter said something to the effect of, if it's totally okay for me to just say I swing my sword at the orc and roll dice to see what happens, shouldn't it also be okay for me to just say I convinced the guard to let me pass and roll dice to see what happens? All this in mind, do you folks have any favorite persuade or con mechanics that you've read or used recently? As an example, I like that Dungeon World's Parlay requires you to have leverage when trying to influence an NPC, but in practice I find that move kind of clunky when used in the moment. What do y'all think of as the platonic ideal of a persuade move? Thoughts here? I forget who highlighted this one to begin with.
I think I tagged.
You definitely
on this one,
tagged
'cause I had a
because you
couple
mentioned
ideas.
you mentioned some stuff for sure.
And I didn't even have this on the tag, but now that I think about it, this is one where I also really like how Blades has, like risky standard and like the various
Control,
like
right,
levels
right.
of
Yeah.
success, because I think that kind of points to point number 2 here.
Mm-hmm.
Because like you could convince the guard to let me pass and roll dice to see what happens, but if you have wanted posters up everywhere and that guard knows that like you've robbed 16 people, then maybe convincing is going to be like not very effective. Like you can roll the dice and see if it happens, but you're not going to have good effect.
Right.
I really like the kind of back and forth nature of firebrands in terms of like, I guess those aren't true persuade mechanics, but it's like questions back and forth between people.
They're negotiations for sure, right?
Yeah.
So many of the Firebrands mini games, even the combat ones, are persuasion games in the sense that, like, all right, how much are you willing to commit to this? And that's really cool. I actually like diceless stuff here a lot in the sense of like, hey, how far is your character willing to go to get in, or to convince someone or to bring them over on their side? It's part of why I do like leverage in Dungeon World or PBTA in general, has that style of like you need something to get something. My biggest thing here is I don't think there is such a thing as the platonic ideal of a persuade move. Obviously, this is what I'm going to say. What is the tone of your game? Is there a game that exists where it is totally cool to be like, yeah, swinging a sword is basically the same verb as talking to someone. We're just like kicking down doors and whispering, the secret passwords and, putting the intimidation into people and conning our way through places. And it's just fun to roll dice. Like, yeah, absolutely. That is a fun weekend to have. I am not here to be like, you should not play a game where you roll dice to convince people to do things, and you can just leave it in that abstract mode. I even think, in a less kind of dismissive sense, there are definitely players who are new to this who it's really stressful to hear something like, okay, well, how do you convince them? So I don't fucking know. I'm not a con man. Like, if I was, I wouldn't be at this table pretending to be a con man. I'd be at this table pretending to be a wizard because I'm trying to escape from my life as a con man. And so I do think that there's value in thinking about, okay, how can we abstract out stuff to just a dice roll? Where do we spend attention? Where do we spend our attention and let ourselves be lenient around that stuff? Because you're right, a lot of tabletop RPGs, certainly the most popular tabletop RPGs, have it set up where it's like, oh yeah, I do an attack or I use a special move, but then you get to convince or persuade, and the GM goes, all right, but what do you say? What is your scheme? What is your like grand plan? And even though mechanically both of those things end with I roll a d20, right? If you're talking about D&D. For me, the answer is, what type of game are you trying to run? Where do you want to put your attention as players and as a GM, storytellers? And the reason we tend not to want to just abstract that stuff out, or I as a GM ask my players, all right, but what's that look like? What is your weird scheme? Isn't because the rules ask me to do it. It's because I want to put the camera there because I think that that's a cool and interesting place for storytelling and for character development to happen. There's a moment in that same arc in Twilight Mirage where Art pretends to be Keith's character with somebody as a scheme to get into a place or to get something from somewhere, and it goes really bad. It's very funny. I love it to death, and that doesn't happen on screen if I say, just roll dice for persuasion. Just give me a consort roll. Like, we lose that bit, and I lose that degree of going back to the previous question of improv, of kind of that deep touch on like, well, what type of character is this person who's trying to scheme their way into a place? If I had to cut one of the two things, either I swing my sword, or if I had to cut like explicit, careful description of either combat or social stuff in a game like the ones that we've been playing, I would probably cut combat before I cut social stuff. Again, that's given what we've been playing thus far. So that is kind of why I put the camera there, and why I think in our games that makes sense. But I think in a game like World of Dungeons, what you're playing is kind of a fun hack and slash Diablo-like thing, maybe that it doesn't make sense to slow the game down in that space. I think that's totally okay. Any other stuff here?
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad we're talking about this. I had originally kind of ear tagged this because I don't have a ton of good examples, but I feel like this is a hurdle for me in terms of moving from like very conversation based text RP to games where dice are here. Because I always just want to do the thing, and it's always weird to be like, well, you need leverage, and it's like, well,
right.
I'm talking to them, and I in real life, you can have a conversation with someone where it's like, this isn't you're not gonna go forward with the thing that you want to do, or it's awkward, or whatever else. So I think that like having the mechanics of a thing makes sense, but I do think that like sometimes it can be hard to find that middle ground.
Right.
I think I like the way that Blades does it, because at least with that, because of the ways that your skills are kind of varied, you can have the like, well, are you doing this in like the command sense? Or are you doing this in the sway sense,
Right.
or something like that, where you can kind of narrow it down a little bit more, that even if the player isn't able to like have that whole conversation and wants to do the thing where it's like, oh, I just want to convince them, you can at least kind of narrow it down what that might look like.
Yeah.
And then use the result to kind of flesh out the conversation if you want to. But yeah, it's tough. It's a tough thing to mechanicize.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because the number 1 and number 2 here are almost opposite perspectives from Jack here, where it is... I am strongly of the belief, and you can go back and listen to the show, that like if something is not going to create an interesting drama because it might not come together, then just let the player have it. Like, yeah, okay, you open the door, right? Like, it's gonna, maybe it takes you a little longer. Maybe if you want to do it quick, I'll make you roll because that introduces an element of risk or whatever. But there's plenty of times when it's like, oh, I'm not even gonna make you roll. This person loves you. Like, this person's gonna do the thing, because of a relationship you have, or because it is just a conversation at that point. That kind of idea of only roll when there is risk involved is pretty well spread inside of the indie RPG community at this point. And I think it's generally a pretty good rule, with the note that you can always find a way to introduce risk if you think, as the GM, that you want to slow something down, and for pacing reasons, or because you think that, like, in terms of where the game has gone so far, it's time to start hammering up the risk. I think about, if you go back and listen to our Lacuna game, there are definitely moments where very simple things suddenly take on additional layers of risk, or a feeling of tension, because it's time in the game for something to feel tense, in the story we're playing. So yeah, there's a degree, as always, that I'm going to point towards flexibility and identifying what your kind of, to steal a word from the game design space, your player experience goal is going to be, and building out what your answer for those things will be from there, instead of trying to find your idealized mechanic and then saying, well, this works in all occasions. Inside of the same game, inside of the same session, you will probably, the best version of this of that session will be one in which you contradict yourself. Where early on in the session, when they're trying to get into the dungeon, or they're trying to get into the facility, they come up with some bullshit reason, and you go like, you know what? Fucking roll dice, let's see. And then 3 hours in, when the alarms are going off, you're like, at that point you might say, okay, all of the doors open up, or like, all right, you're gonna, they're chasing you through, but you're gonna be able to, like, run up and hack stuff quickly. Let's just do one roll for every door instead of making you roll at every door, right? You're going to break your own rules here and there, and that is part of why these games work, is because they're not hard coded to prevent you from being hypocritical. So don't try to find the thing that, like, is 100% applicable all the time. You will like end up being so frustrated if you do, if that makes sense. All right, I'm gonna keep moving, because look, we got through a question without my internet dying. We got through 2 questions without my internet dying.
Don't jinx that.
I know, I shouldn't have said anything. From Gary. In play, have any of you ever tried out characters as a way to explore your real-life identity? Sort of like trying on an identity to see if it fits your actual self, but in the safe space of a game with friends, where you're still at a remove from being the same person as your character. Curious. I think, Andy, you tagged this one?
Yeah, I did. I feel like that might be. I feel like for obvious reasons. But I personally, I did do this, and I think I think it's really helpful to do, and I think the main reason why I wanted to talk about it is just so I can be like, people should experiment with this stuff more. I think it's a really good, safe way to test out, for example, if you are experimenting with different pronouns, if you're struggling with your gender identity, or if turns out you don't want a gender because it's not real. Like, you can test all that in a safe way if you have a close knit, or not even a close knit. If you have you can show up to a tabletop game, honestly, with a character sheet and be like, my character is X, Y, and Z, and like they have these pronouns, and people should hopefully just be like, okay, that's your character, and it's a safe way for you to like test out how you feel being referred to as that, like, in that way, or if you want to, like, obviously not just in terms of gender identity, you can play a character whose sexuality is different than what you identify as, but there's still, I think it, like it says in the question, there's that buffer there where if things don't feel right and you don't want to commit to it, you can sort of back off and rethink about things and find out what like works for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I kind of compare it to like just going, like asking someone like, hey, could you refer to me with like neutral pronouns, like they, them, for a while, just to try it out and see how it fits. Or like, well, I did that with feminine pronouns with my partner, and then here I am. Um, and so like I think that stuff is really healthy, and I think encouraging it in like not just like with people that like are you're in a relationship with, but like in these sort of social like playful spaces where you can it's not the forefront of your mind, but it's a thing happening as well, and it can make you feel a bit more comfortable with that, at least in my experience.
Totally. I actually gave a talk on this topic this year out at the Pomona colleges. I was invited to talk about failure and storytelling. And also, that talk was on Valentine's Day, which is extremely funny timing to give a talk on failure. And in it, I talked about a bunch of stuff, the neoliberal individual and the evolution of the novel and a bunch of other shit. And what I wanted to introduce into it was the role games as a safe place for experimentation and failure come from or serve for us. There's a queer theorist named Jack Halberstam who wrote a great book called The Queer Art of Failure. And Jack writes a lot about the ways in which failing under kind of the neoliberal capitalist system that demands that we fit into certain normative roles and normative identities is a great method of resistance. There's the quote I have written down here is heteronormative common sense leads to the equation of success with advancement, capital accumulation, family, ethical conduct, and hope. Other subordinate queer or counter-hegemonic modes of common sense lead to the association of failure with nonconformity, anti-capitalist practices, non-reproductive lifestyles, negativity, and critique. Later, instead, queerness, which is in many ways defined by failure to uphold the values of the quote-unquote good liberal individual, revels in the same open-endedness. Sorry, that's actually me talking this last little bit. Queerness, I'm looking at my own notes and they're a fucking mess, just like my prep is. Queerness, which by society is defined by the failure to uphold the good liberal individual, revels in the open-endedness that happens in storytelling about failure. And the thing that I end up saying here is like, I love Jack Halberstam. I love the idea of the queer art of failure, but it's hard to do that in real life. It's hard to like really lean in to loss and lean into rejecting the like demands of society to like decide. The specific quote that Halberstam says is that we should fail, make a mess, fuck shit up, be loud, unruly, impolite, breed resentment, bash back, speak up and out, disrupt, assassinate, shock, and annihilate. And that is like a hell of a great life like lesson or life theory to wield as you move through a world that hates you and who you identify, or the way you identify and the way you are. But ask anyone from a marginalized background, not that Halberstam is not, but it's hard to do that and dangerous to do that, right? Like, as much as I want to blast my music when a cop pulls me over, nah, like, it ain't worth it. Like, it is too risky to do. And so games offer a space where you can play with identity and play with modes that are not just about accumulation, that are, and it's part of why queerness has been at the heart of like an independent games revolution in the last decade, and marginalized identities in general. You look at something like Big Bad Con that's happening this week, where like queer folks, people of color, indigenous creators, like all at the heart of that, because games are a space where we can be those things and fuck up and not fit into the mold of what it means to be a quote unquote good black person or a passing trans person, and feel like those are the only modes of success available to us. Games allow us to have that freedom without having no stakes, but also without having stakes that could be potentially truly fatal, right? Life shattering. And so like, absolutely, this is a space where we can try to tackle these things about us, also things about the world. It's one of the reasons why I like games as a space to talk about issues like existential crises, depression, empire, all the things that we've tried to hit over the years, is because it is this middle ground between dealing with them in real life where they can just be so, or not real life, not that games aren't real life, but you know what I'm saying, in our day-to-day lives where they can be so burdensome and so devastating. But also they're different than just watching it on TV for me or just reading a book about it, because there is still that degree of investment. And the fact that they can provide that space to explore both, who you wish to be and who you aspire to be in different visions of yourself, and also a place to investigate and explore really complex and difficult topics, is why they mean so much to me. And also, you do it collaboratively. You do it with other people, which is, as anyone who has dealt with a lot of these things in real life knows, can be the hardest part of figuring out who you are or how you want the world to be. So, shout outs to games is what I'm going to say. Any other thoughts here? Anyone else feel like they've done that sort of exploration of who they are via games? Dre, I think you also marked this question.
Yeah. I definitely think games have been a way that have let me feel a lot more like comfortable and honest in identifying as a queer person. I think like I'm a queer cis man, and I'm engaged to a cis woman, so I'm very much in like a hetero passing relationship. But it's been really important for me and like really impactful in ways I did not realize, to be able to like have non-heterosexual relationships with characters and friends at the table, just to like make me feel like that I'm still getting to like express and explore that part of myself.
Totally. Yeah. Allie, you have anything? Should we keep on moving?
I want to give a shout out to Friends at the Table for allowing me to partake in my most important part of queer expression, which is killing every man I think I'm in love with.
Fuck. Going back to from autumn forward, honestly.
I'm 3 for 3.
Wait, are you 3 for 3? Okay. Well, I can't say spoilers. Let me just count in my head. 1, easy. 2.
Uh-huh.
Oh yeah, okay. It took all the way to the end there, huh? For 2.
Mm-hmm.
What's 3? Where am I missing?
I count Castile and Malcolm.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
okay. I was thinking about Twilight Mirage, and I was like, I don't think.
I'm 3.5 for 3 because Tender wasn't in love with
With who?
whoever.
Yeah. Award-winning bounty hunter Waltz Tango Cash does use he/him pronouns.
I'll say it again. The problem with Tender is that I had to separate my own love.
Gotcha.
Waltz Tango.
Okay, from Tender. I gotcha.
Who would have ID'd as a lesbian if you asked her, but
Right.
God. Yeah, no,
Fair.
I'm fine.
Fair.
It's going great.
Can't wait for this next season. Love it. All right. We have one more good question here from Lee. Austin told a story on the March 2019 Tips episode about a Dragon Ball loving dude he talked to on the bus. And in it made a reference to Wawa. I was just wondering about my favorite podcast or sandwich chain preferences. Subway, Quiznos, Potbelly. Which do you prefer? I'm a Jimmy John's fan myself. I don't know what a Potbelly is.
It's all right.
All right. So, wow. So not Potbelly from Dre. Dre just was like, it's all right. It ain't all that.
I think their sandwiches are kind of dry.
Gotcha.
I don't want a
So
dry sandwich.
what do you like? What's your situation?
Okay. If we're talking just chains, we
can't be like that spot down the road.
Right. Probably Penn Station. I fucking love a hot grilled Penn Station sub with some good French fries.
This is a chain called Penn Station?
Mm-hmm.
It's a very funny chain.
Penn Station East Coast subs. I also like Jersey Mike's.
Okay.
And then I also like, I don't know how far outside of the South this one is, but McAllister's.
Don't know McAllister's.
Yeah.
I know Jersey Mike's. I've never tried a Jersey Mike's because of being from Jersey and being like, all right, if you say so, Mike.
And I'll say
I should
special shout out to Publix grocery store sub sandwiches.
Okay, I've had Publix. I definitely agree that they're like, yeah, this is all right.
Way better than you would expect a pre-made grocery store sub wrapped in plastic.
Yeah.
To be.
Great, like road trip pullover, get gas, get a
Mhm.
get a sandwich that's pre-made, and be like, you know what, it's all right.
Yep.
I haven't had Quiznos in too long. I checked recently, and there's not a Quiznos within walking distance, and it bummed me out
I
because
think Quiznos are bankrupt in Canada.
Yeah.
are they?
What?
Yeah.
I think they might be in many parts of the U.S. as well.
What? There was a Quiznos in Canada. That's like where so in college, there was a Quiznos at the end of the street that the bowling alley was in, where Art and I took bowling class. And after bowling, I had a class, so I couldn't stop at that Quiznos because I would miss the next class, so I couldn't like do a Quiznos lunch. Except once every third class, I would go with them to Quiznos with Art and my other friends from that class to get Quiznos and cut that class because that's how much I liked one of the subs available at Quiznos. Then I went to grad school years later in London, Ontario, and there was a Quiznos that was like a far walk but walkable, and I made that walk once a week, and it was the best. It was so good, and I miss it. And I've not had Quiznos once, maybe once since moving back to the States. So it's probably been about 5 years since I've had like a regular Quiznos in my life. That said, Quiznos does not hold a fucking candle to Wawa. It's a different situation. Like I wouldn't even come close to making the same order at those two places. But a Wawa sub is like, if I could walk 4 miles tonight to get to a Wawa, I'd do it.
All right, so describe the Wawa sandwich ordering experience to me.
Oh, it's a bad sandwich ordering experience. It's a touch screen at this point. It's you order your shit on a touch screen, you walk away, you maybe like look at the tasty cakes. You're like, "Ooh, wow, I haven't been in Jersey in a minute. They don't really have tasty cakes up in New York. What could I get? Nah, I'm going to skip that. I'm going to get some Hers chips and get those sour cream and onion. I'm gonna go through the drink cabinet. What do I want? Oh, Wawa has their own sub brand of like iced teas. I could get like a Wawa iced tea. That's basically sugar water though. You know, when we get in Arizona, it says 99 cents on the can, so that's a win. Then let me like swing by. Let me look at like the meat products if I want to get like a Slim Jim. No, I don't. I'm in my 30s. I cannot be eating Slim Jims anymore. I mean, just let me pump the brakes. Let me look out and see. Okay, it looks like my dad is done getting the gas or whatever, paying for the gas because you cannot add your own gas to your own car because you're in New Jersey. Good thing I just remembered that for this story. So he's paid someone for that. He has not done it himself. And then I'm going to go, and what I'll definitely grab, even though I won't like it, is they have like quote unquote soft pretzels by the counter under a heat lamp. They're like a little stale, and it's going to get even more stale because you're going to put it in the bag and forget about it, and you'll remember in like 3 hours and be like, oh, it's a little stale, but if you bite into it, it's still pretty good anyway. Then you pay for everything. You get a ticket. You got a ticket from when you were at the touchscreen. They stamp the ticket, and it goes paid, and then you bring it back to the counter before you're done. You give it to them, and they put it on one of those like, spikes to be like, yeah, this is paid, boom, and then they give you the sandwich, and then you go home and eat the sandwich, and it's good. That's the sandwich ordering experience at a Wawa.
So is it a cold sandwich? Is it a hot sandwich?
They do both. They'll do both.
Okay.
I get like a sub, right? Like I get normally like a turkey sub with oil and vinegar and like salt and pepper and oregano.
Hell yeah.
I do onions and I do peppers. I do like sweet peppers, sometimes jalapenos. My stomach doesn't love that I do jalapenos, but I'm gonna get them anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And you can get the sub anywhere. Like I could go to Subway and get the sub, but it's not the same,
Yeah.
But it's if I could have a Wawa in my life again, that would be really good. They do tiny ones called shorties. They do like it's juniors, shorties, shorty with an I, and classics. I believe is there different sizes. It's so good, and I miss it so much.
Is that like the difference between a 6-inch and like a
6-inch is yes.
Okay.
I believe so. Classic is like a foot long for sure.
Right.
God, and then once a year they have Hoagie Fest. God.
I've heard good things about Hoagie Fest.
Hoagie Fest is good. All hoagies. $3 for a junior, $4 for a shorty, $5 for a classic. I'm going to show you this image. I'm going to put this image on the screen right now, and you're going to be like, we have to go. Let me open this image in a new tab. Bring this. Look at this Hoagie Fest. Look at this. $4 for a meatball sub. Are you kidding me? Get out of here! It's a deal. It's a steal.
I would rather go pay $7 at an Italian place if I was gonna get a meatball sub.
Sure, but
I don't
sometimes you're
know.
on the
Yeah.
Parkway, you know?
No, I know. I just have like I'm not big on sandwiches anyway, so I
Okay.
have like an aversion to chain sandwich places.
I'm so glad I'm not the only one.
Yeah, like I have a. This does look fantastic. The hoagie. Those meatballs look too like clean. Like no. Jersey Mike's upsets me because you should just get a sandwich made by a guy named Mike from Jersey.
Yes.
Right? Like,
But I like the thing for me is I also go do that. It's okay to have both of these in your life.
Yes, it's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you don't have access to New Jersey or New York delis, like it's fine to go to a chain place, but
that is the thing that breaks my heart here is like I don't have an Italian style deli close to me. I have bodegas where I can get my bodega order is a different thing than like my Italian deli order or even my Jewish deli order. Like those are all different things. And all of those are different than the sub I would get at a sub shop at like in New Jersey or Philly or wherever. It's weird. It's a lot to navigate. I used to love Subway also, and I don't like it as much. Something happened and it like makes me a little sick to think about now.
Yeah.
It just no, go on.
I was just gonna say the last time I had Subway, it was a really bad experience.
Yeah, I
got like a pizza sub, but I got it on flatbread because I was like, oh, this will be like a pizza
That's like
grilled
a pizza.
cheese.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be fun. And then I got it, and it was disgusting. I don't know why. I had nice toppings on it,
What happened?
They all tasted wrong.
Yeah, that's the worst is ordering a sub or ordering a sandwich from a chain place and being like, "Ooh, this isn't right." It's not bad in the like it's not like I don't think that this stuff is like not fresh, but something is wrong about this.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That happened to me with Subway meatball sandwiches.
Ooh.
Just one day I had one and it was not
So that was
same anymore. And
that was me and
I'm not doing this anymore.
The Subway chicken teriyaki sandwich, which I loved for years, and then like one day I was like, I'm never eating this again. I could never eat it again. I probably had hundreds of those sandwiches from when I was like 15 to 27 or something, and then never again, ever. So I don't know. I didn't even get sick. It was like this tastes. My taste buds are last week. This was good, and today it's bad. This isn't like an ideological change on my part. Like, I'm trying to think if there's any other sandwiches that are like. Because if we open it up to a bodega or a deli, it just gets.
Oh yeah.
Be anything.
I will say Subway, get the grilled chicken,
okay,
provolone,
okay,
with green onions, oil and vinegar, and you're set.
Wow.
Sounds pretty good.
Does sound pretty good.
I'm gonna make a sandwich for dinner after this.
Yeah, I'm gonna get a sandwich too. Shoot.
Also, Austin, there might still be a Quiznos right outside of Brooklyn College, which is the only Quiznos I've ever been to.
There is. That is the Quiznos I've been to, like in the last
it's like
couple of years. I believe
15 feet from the subway exit. If you just need to take that trip for yourself one day.
There are some in Manhattan I can go to that are like closer because I'm in Queens and getting to Brooklyn is hell. But there's like none in Queens anymore. I think there's one. I want to say all the way out in like Kew Gardens or something. But at that point, you're basically at Hofstra. Like you may as well be in Long Island at that point. So. Don't tell the people of Kew Gardens, who I like very much, that I said that about them. They would be offended. But yeah, I think that's as far as chains go. I'm trying to think if there's any other chains that are like a hard pass for me.
You know what? Chain sandwich I'm really looking forward to is the Popeyes one.
Oh, bring it back.
What's going on?
I don't know.
It's gone.
Bring your
but
own
they still
bun.
have the signs
It's
up.
fun.
They still have the signs up saying they're sold out. And if you aren't bringing it back, take the signs down.
Yeah.
My Popeyes that I drive past like literally every day.
Yeah.
Just had like on the towards the street, they have a sign that's just like, here's sandwiches. And then once you get into the drive-thru, they're like, nah, I'm sorry.
Wow.
And like once a week, I've been checking the Popeye's website
God.
just to see.
So now I have to tell a different story, Allie, that you know already, because you're the one I've been updating on this deal. All right. So in August, you might know the month of August because it's the month that we still have a bunch of Patreon stuff to catch up on. In August, August like 13th or something, there was supposed to be a Chipotle that opened up in the part of Queens I live in Astoria. It did not open up. It was going to be next to a McDonald's. It was supposed to open up, and I was going to go to it. And this was I think this was when we were doing finale recording or something. Because my earliest message to you about it is August 20th. Because it was supposed to have opened by then, and I was like, I'm gonna go get Chipotle. I'm gonna do a recording. I'm excited about it, and went to it. It did not open. I went to the McDonald's. It was okay. My stomach was not happy about that, but I was like, all right, whatever. I checked the internet. There's a website called We Heart Astoria. That site said, we previously reported that Steinway Chipotle will be opening Wednesday, August 14th, but a rep just let us know that it was moved again, or that it was moved at the time until September. Okay, that's fine. Reported, actually it wasn't even September, it was originally August 28th it was supposed to reopen. Allie has gotten so many messages from me since that mid-August as that same news story has updated over and over again. It is now October 12th. That is 2 months after it was originally scheduled to open. Every 3 weeks I go by, it's still closed. I check the website, and it changes. And at this point, it's changed so many times that the original We Heart Astoria website is just the page that said, oh, here's an update on the Chipotle thing, is just raw. They've done the Command F, change the month to a different month thing, to where this news story now starts back in November. We shared news that a Chipotle location will be opening. Now it'll be opening in November, because it's changed so many times that there's Control F, change August to November. I don't care if it ruins the whole news story. I'm so mad. I just want to go to a Chipotle near me because I don't want to ever go to a Chipotle in that way. Do you know what I mean? I never want to get on a bus or a subway and be like, I'm going to a Chipotle. But sometimes I would like to have a Chipotle burrito, even though I know they're not as good as other burritos I could get in the neighborhood I live in. Because sometimes I want a Chipotle burrito, not a good burrito.
It's such a different thing.
It is.
It's like the desire for a McDonald's burger over just having a burger.
A
it's
good, right, totally.
Completely different. Yep.
Yes. It's unbelievable. I don't understand. I don't understand. But at least they said November now. I'm curious if they'll hit this year. Honestly, I'm genuinely curious if they'll hit this year.
This sounds like the struggle we're having in Louisville about Steak and Shake.
Wait, what's going on with Steak and Shake?
They've all closed suddenly and mysteriously, and now half of them have signs that say temporarily closed for renovation.
Wow.
But they've been closed for 2 months at this point.
Is it good? I've never been to a Steak and Shake, I don't think.
It's fine.
Yeah.
It is dirt cheap.
Okay.
And it's pretty good for how dirt cheap it is.
I should look into it. Are they up here at all, or are they only down there?
I think it's a Midwest thing.
That makes sense. It looks like there might be... Nope. No. There's... No. There, you know what is pinging here when I type it in is Shake Shack, which is a different place.
Very different place.
Yeah.
Is it very different? Wait, what is the distinction?
Shake Shack is
it's high quality comparative.
It's a much better. I mean, Steak and Shake is you go get I guess they have the style of smash burgers that Steak Shack does, but they're much thinner and they're probably lower quality meat as well.
Okay.
But it's you get a double cheeseburger and a thing of fries for $5 at a Steak and Shake.
God damn,
But the service is always going to be pretty spotty.
Gotcha.
It's the place you go when you're 16 and there's one within walking distance of the movie theater. And so you just go sit there for 2 hours because you're 16.
All right. You know what? Honestly, I've been 16. That sounds better than some shit I got up to when I was 16. No one
Those
is.
places need to exist. Yeah.
Yeah, that or hang out in the parking lot and push your friends around inside of grocery store shopping carts, and like don't do that. That's more dangerous.
I don't know.
You know
I've
what?
seen the health code.
You know what?
like-
You know what?
like
Yeah, I guess I
grades
shouldn't
on
say
some of
things.
those stick of shakes.
Yeah, you know what? Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair. And are there any Canadian like chains that we just don't know about,
Like sandwich stuff?
or just it's broad at this point? You know what I
Oh,
mean?
well, I mean, the ones that I always bring up because their names are nonsense are Boston Pizza and New York Fries.
It's so
Um,
funny.
Ooh.
Janine used to work
Because-
at a Boston Pizza, and I teased her mercilessly about it.
Oh, they're not
Or
good.
maybe it was a New Orleans pizza. Is that also a thing up there?
I don't know. I'm not familiar with New Orleans pizza.
What about
Okay.
like Nebraska chicken?
No. We do have. No, those are the only weird American ones, actually. Like American location names that
right.
I can think of. New York Fries is all right, but I don't
Is
know
that a
why.
poutine? What is it? Just a fry? Like
So
what?
it's like, yeah, it's fries, poutine, and then they also do like hot dogs.
Okay.
So it's like, I think they're going for like, their logo is like a ripoff of the New York Yankees logo. So I think they're going for like a ballpark thing, but it's really weird.
Oh, that's very. Oh, wow. That's very funny. I see it
York
now.
fries.
New
Let's
York
see.
fries. I'm now looking at fast food chains in Canada. There were A&Ws up there still. That's true.
Oh yeah.
What else did I see a lot of up there? A lot of these are just the
Yeah,
same
I
ones
can't look at this.
here.
I just want some fries.
Andy, are you a member of the New York Fry Society
I'm
loyalty
not.
program?
I didn't realize that I could join the Fry Society. I'd love to be a debutante among Fry Society.
Every purchase earns you 1 point, and after 10 purchases, you choose any one item off the menu for free.
Hmm.
Okay.
And
Okay.
you can get
Oh.
free regular fries on your birthday.
I guess that actually sounds all right. I might get into that. Sorry. The other one I guess I forgot I should bring up is Swiss Chalet,
Swiss
which
Chalet,
is
yeah.
fucking
Yeah.
nasty.
Wow, the anti-Swiss Chalet.
No, I hate Swiss Chalet so much. People can give me shit about that. I think it's so gross.
Oh, this doesn't look good.
Bodied. There's going to
It's
be
like
a
a
fracture on this
Boston
podcast.
Market
It-
equivalent. It's okay.
I was
It's
gonna
Yeah.
say
fine.
this looks just like Boston
It's-
Market.
It's like sit down Boston Market. It's like real talk. It's like Boston Market if they expected you to wear a tie, not a tie,
Oh.
but like to come with your family. Do you know what I mean?
That is like their vibe, but also now they have ones that are in a combo with the Harvey's, which is just a burger place.
Yeah, Harvey's
And there's
is a
actually
burger
one
place.
near me that is just an express Swiss Chalet, which is takeout only.
Wow. Listen,
Wow.
people
Which is
want their
really
chicken.
weird.
People want their. It's. I didn't like the fries. There are a few things there I liked, but I didn't love. I really don't like the Swiss Chalet sauce that is
That's
like,
my thing.
I will,
No.
like no. It was like a weird. I don't even know how to describe the chalet sauce. We're making Janine very mad right now. I'm sure.
Sorry.
Listen,
I've had it and I will probably have it every time I'm in Canada, but like
Yeah.
I mean, you gotta.
yeah.
You also
Y'all got
have.
Outback?
Oh yeah. Do you have
Somewhere. I've never been to an Outback.
Andy,
Yeah, I know.
Andy.
we gotta go to an
Andy,
Outback.
Why didn't we go to an Outback when we were together?
I feel like I've mentioned this before.
Because we went to Burger
We
Study
also-
every
we-
goddamn day.
Yeah, we got other
Okay.
food.
Burger Study was all right. You know, it was
Oh,
all right.
yeah.
Shout outs to Burger Study.
Shout outs.
You still have Little Caesars up there, but you also have a thing called Pizza, which is always
Yeah, we have-
confused me.
Yeah,
Ooh.
we have Little Caesars, Pizza, Mama's Pizza, Pizzaiolo. I'm just naming pizza places that I see everywhere now.
Which was the pizza place that was someone was creating fake ads for it, and it was just like a phone number that you called that was like, "We're pizza," but they weren't.
Oh, is that
Oh.
real?
Yeah, I think I
Fake
had to
ads.
have been talking to you about this, but it was like a big scam in the Toronto area where it was like they were
Oh my
like
God.
literally printing flyers and being like, "Call this number to get this pizza," but they were like a underground pizza place.
That's. I don't know about that. I do know that Garfield Pizza
I
is
was-
based here.
I was about to bring up
Oh,
Garfield
that's
Pizza.
right.
Yeah, which I need to go eat at,
When
but
I
I'm
was-
scared too.
Andy, can I tell you something?
Hmm.
I remember we got brunch when I was last in Toronto.
Yeah.
I got brunch with you instead of, and I want to just read a DM from a friend of mine. A friend of mine had said, "Do you want to come get Garfield pizza with a bunch of communists?" And
Oh my god.
I had to say no to that friend because I really wanted to get brunch with y'all.
I mean, that was a nice brunch.
It was a nice brunch. That was a really nice day. So
Next time you're up here, we'll go to
we
Garfield
can go
Pizza
to
and we'll round up some communists.
wherever will we find some communists? Who could say?
Oh, I don't know.
All right. On that note, I think let's wrap this one up. If you have questions, you can send them to tips@thetable@gmail.com. And as always, you can support the show by going to friendsattetable.cash. Thank you always for all of your great questions. We're going to be doing some more of these because we are still in catch-up mode, so look forward to another one not that far from now. All right. We'll talk to y'all later. Not this week. Are we doing anything else live? Or is that next week? What?
No, it's
Today is Saturday. Today is Saturday, so there's no other part of the week. I guess just look forward to more stuff from us in the near future.
Yeah, there should be a live at the table sometime next week. We don't know when yet, but there will be. And then just more stuff.
Awesome. Sounds good. All right. A reminder that if you haven't listened to it yet, there's a new Drawing Maps up, so you can go listen to that right now. All right. Peace.